Ladies and gentlemen, the sports car you've been waiting for. This is the 2024 Nissan Z. In this episode of Behind the Wheel, we'll answer some of the questions you might have about Nissan's latest sports car. Just exactly how does it perform out on the streets? Whether on a twisty road like this, or as a daily driver. How much is it? And how does it fare against the competition? And most importantly, does it live up to the hype? Stick around to the end of this video and find out. The first natural question you're gonna have when you see something like this is just exactly how much is that car? Well, I can tell you that if you whip out the AutoDeal app where you can find and compare the best prices on brand new cars from our official dealer partners, it will show you that the 2024 Nissan Z is available at 3,888,000 Philippine pesos for both the manual and the automatic, which is, I thought, kind of strange because I'd figured that the automatic was a bit more. At that price, it's already 1 million Philippine pesos more than where the 370Z started way back then. But I can tell you, as it is, I believe it's worth it. Hear me out. Its closest rival is the Toyota GR Supra that comes in at well over 5 million Philippine pesos, 5.3 to be exact. The price difference between that and this, that's already an entire Nissan Kicks in difference. And overall, it's really just a big step from the 370. How big? Let me show you. Gone is the VQ naturally aspirated 3.7-liter V6. Now the Z has a VR 3-liter twin-turbo V6 that produces 378 horses and 475 Newton-meters of torque. Now earlier I did mention that there are two transmissions available, a manual and an automatic. The manual is a 6-speed gearbox while the automatic is a 9-speed. Pretty awesome, right? On the highway, if you're interested, it does do well at about 14.5 kilometers per liter, which is quite surprising considering the size of the engine. In the city, however, it only does about 6 kilometers per liter. But again, and I've said this in a previous video, you're not gonna get yourself a V6 to go 12 kilometers per liter inside the city, right? No. This motor also sits on the same platform as the motor that you will find in the GTR. Now, in terms of numbers, it has 43 more horses than the GR Supra, but it's down by 25 Newton meters. How does that all work exactly on the road? What does it feel like? We'll get to that a little bit later. But first, let's look at the exterior of the car. I gotta be completely honest with you guys that I think Nissan really knocked it out of the park when they designed this Z. It is just so gorgeous. And a lot of its design elements and influences come from the Zs of the past. The front end is unmistakably 240Z. It's very simple and elegant at the same time. The headlights are shaped really beautifully, and there's something about the DRLs that just really stands out to me. It's retro done right, I would say. Now, the front grille, I wasn't too sure about, even when I first saw this car in clay and plastic many years ago, but we couldn't talk about it because of the NDA. After seeing it in the metal, so to speak, and spending a lot more time with it, yeah, I do actually get it. And Jack pointed out one very good thing, is that the top end of this grille is actually reminiscent of the 240Z. So there's some history there. Down the side, it remains very classic with the minimal lines and the overall profile. It's got a long hood and a short tail. It's a recipe that's worked time and again, and dude, I'm here for it. And oh yeah, this paint, it's really nice too. Now, it may not show well on camera, but there is a really classy metallic finish to it. And with a color like this, there will be a lot of people turning their heads as you pass by, trust me. Down below, you have 19-inch raised forged wheels that look absolutely stunning. 255/40 up front and 275/35 at the rear. Ground clearance is, well, respectable at 126 millimeters, which is, well, it makes it quite easy to move around town with. Oh, and another thing, not for anything, I don't have a problem with it, but look at the size of this fuel door. It's massive. This thing could block out the sun better than the clouds out there. Look at this. I'd never get tan. At the rear, you have a lip spoiler, lights inspired by that of the Z32-300ZX, and a rear quarter angle that looks so good, makes you want to go to church just to say thank you. Oh, and also, no fakery here. Proper twin exhausts that sound like this. Amen. And one more thing to wrap up the whole heritage concept. Check this out. Nice. I never thought I'd say this, but there are precautions when opening the rear of a Nissan Z. Number one is that the button is found here underneath the sign. It isn't, however, part of the lid because you should be careful. I almost ripped this damn thing off trying to open it. It actually opens from here. That's precaution number one. I'll get to the second one a little bit later. You are looking at 241 liters of space, which is more than enough for 2 overnight bags or 2 hand carry bags, and possibly 1 golf bag. Well, a second golf bag if you're talking about my height, the kind of golf clubs that I use for par 43. That's about all I can reach. That's really all that you can do because there are no rear seats to fold. If you're looking for a performance vehicle with a bit more space, might I suggest the GR Yaris because that does have a second row at the back that you can fold and you can expand the cargo space ever so much more to put balikbayan boxes in there and whatnot. But here, you are limited with space. The second precaution that I will tell you is that when you load something into this vehicle, be very, very careful on just exactly how you close the rear door, because the last thing you want to do is break the rear glass. Wait, I just realized there are no rear seats in this. Leave the kids at home. Date night car. Ooh, nice. Where are we going, honey? Getting into the Z might be a bit difficult for some who aren't used to getting into low sports cars. But I will say that it's easier to get inside this car than you would into, let's say, for example, the GR Supra, because it's a bit tighter. Here, it's a little better. Getting into your proper driving position shouldn't be an issue either, because for the most part, it's actually powered. You can move the seat forward and back, as well as the backrest too. You can move that back and forward. The telescopic steering wheel adjusts as so. The only thing that might take a little bit of time would be the adjustment height of the seat, which are 2 knobs found here on the left. Luckily though, Jack and I like to sit as low as possible inside the car, which means that even he, with all this bolstering, can find a very easy driving position inside this car. Which, by the way, my boss one time quit and he said, how the hell does Kako see anything if he sits so low and he's so short? It's because I don't see. I use the force. And that's how you get into accidents. Up front, you have a 12-inch TFT instrument cluster where you can find all the info you need like fuel consumption, trip, driver assist systems, and critical car information when you switch it to sport mode like the temperature of your fluids. Ew, warm. The steering wheel feels good to the touch, size and shape are great. What isn't so great, however, are the piano blacks found, which collects dust and fingerprints really, really fast. Faster than this thing can go from 0 to 60, trust me. The other thing I also don't like are the buttons themselves because, well, they feel like they're on a rocker rather than being buttons, individual buttons themselves. But hey, you can get used to it very easily. On top of the dash, you have a turbo pressure, speed, and voltmeter. Now, these 3 gauges might seem familiar because overall, it's still based on the 370Z. Another familiar touch would be the air vents that are found on the doors as well as the door handles. You got an 8-inch touchscreen infotainment system. It isn't the most responsive one out there, and the backup camera does need some work, but it does have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. The center stack configuration is actually pretty good. I like it. You've got all the physical buttons, which I love. The shifter is digital, which is nothing great, but at least it works well. You've got your drive mode selector here. You've got your drift activator here. You've got cup holders here. You've got a storage console here with a 12-volt socket found there. You've had another 12-volt socket over there, type A and type C charging point. And yeah, I think that it's very much reminiscent of the 370Z. But what I like is that they've sorted it out quite nicely. I do believe so. Hey, you know what? Enough of this chit chat. Let's get this sucker on the road. But before we do, please consider subscribing to our channel because we create these videos just for you guys. Jack, close the door. I don't want you here. I'm out of here. Close the door, man! When I first set off in the Z, the one thing that I noticed immediately is just how comfortable it is to drive this automobile. And not just for the driver, but for the passenger as well. In fact, Jack fell asleep inside this car on the way to shoot with like drool coming out of his face. I'd show you a video, but the man does have like 100 pounds of muscle on me, so yeah, that's not gonna happen. The NVH inside this car is well isolated, better than that of the 370Z. Vibrations are not over the top, and the suspension isn't going to rattle you because, well, it's not as stiff as you would expect in terms of sports car standards. Here's the thing, it is a sports car. That's what it's called and that's what it is. But truthfully, I don't think that I'd have a problem calling this car a GT, although it's not, because it's just that comfortable. I can totally and completely see the Z as someone's daily drive. I don't think there would be issues with that. Well, so long as that driver and passenger don't have that much luggage with them and you don't expect the car to be hauling things to and from on a daily basis. But as a daily drive, even inside the city, yeah, better out on the highways like this, but yeah. Plus, add to the fact that, well, the fuel economy isn't great, but it's not as if it's drinking fuel with a straw. It's not that bad considering it's a V6. And yet another aspect that makes this a good daily drive is all the driver aids that you have inside this car. You've got adaptive cruise, collision control, blind spot monitoring, and all the bells and whistles that Nissan Intelligent Mobility has. Oh, and visibility is great too, thanks largely to the fact that, well, the A-pillars are not all that big. You can see very, very clearly. Okay, so the rear quarter, yeah, that's nothing great. You can't really see all that much when you turn your head. But thankfully, there are blind spot monitors, again, also as part of Nissan's Intelligent Mobility. But even me, a shorter person sitting in somewhat of a bucket seat, looking like a child on his tiptoes at a urinal, trying just to make it. It's true though. I have no issues looking out. You don't have this problem because you're tall. The cornering and handling of this car is like katana levels of sharpness. It's unbelievable. Thanks to the double wishbone setup up front, this thing would make Hattori Hanzo proud, man. Check this out. And besides, the colors would really suit Uma Thurman. Man, I gotta get me a pair of shoes this color. Nissan really set up the motors and the turbo very well. The power is just absolutely sublime. You get a rush of torque immediately low in the rev range, and it just keeps going up and up until the rev limiter. Man, this is really intoxicating. Woo! And I gotta add, the turbos really make a night and day difference compared to the 3.7 liter naturally aspirated of the 370Z, man. It's a hang on, Jack. Oh my gosh, so much fun. The 9-speed automatic transmission is good, and around the city, it's okay. It's just that at lower speeds, you may catch yourself, or catch the car rather, because it tends to surge forward ever so slightly. It is not, most definitely not a DCT, far from it. But if you're looking for, say, a maximum driving enjoyment, it would most definitely be the manual that you're going to want. That's probably a no-brainer right there. It really is, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, a comfortable ride. But there might be a drawback to that to some people because, well, they may feel that the comfortability or the comfortable ride, I don't even know if comfortability is a word, but the comfortable ride is not really something that you want when you're sitting in a car of this nature or of this stature. You want something a bit stiffer, you want something a bit aggressive. But the truth is, if you want those aggressive or stiffer rides, you're only going to need or want it when you're pushing it like the devil is chasing you or when you're out on the track. When you're on open roads like this, oh my goodness, give me the comfortable ride any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Oh, and that's not to say that this car is a slouch, because really, even with this type of suspension, throwing it around, oh my goodness, so much fun. I can't even remember the number of years it has been since I first laid eyes on this car. When it wasn't even a real car, it was still clay and plastic and whatnot, and we couldn't talk about it. I couldn't even tell Jack. That's how ironclad the NDA was. But now that it's finally here in the flesh, I am absolutely enjoying this car. And while it has met my expectations, the question is, since it is a global product, does it meet the hype? Well, at 3.8 million Philippine pesos, well, actually closer to 3.9 million Philippine pesos, you are getting one hell of a car in the Z. It is not only a hell of a lot of fun when you're driving it on open roads, but it is also comfortable enough to be your daily drive. And then there's its looks. Jeez, man, don't tell anyone I said this, but I think the looks alone are well worth the price. Does it live up to the hype? 110%, no doubt. If you have the means to get one and you're on the fence about whether to get one or not, don't be. Get off that fence and get your butt inside this car. It's that damn good. However, getting said butt into the car, that actually might be the issue, because the demand for the Z is way more than Nissan can actually supply. And that alone says a lot.